What if I told you that the biggest shock wasn't the building, wasn't the accent, wasn't even the silence? It was the moment he realized that everything he thought church was supposed to feel like was about to be completely turned upside down. When a Black American visits a UK church for the first time, you expect small cultural differences. Maybe the spelling of color, maybe the accent, maybe tea instead of coffee. But nothing prepares you for the emotional whiplash of walking into a place that looks familiar, yet feels entirely different. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. He had grown up in Atlanta. Church wasn't just a Sunday routine, it was an event, a production, a spiritual concert mixed with a family reunion. The choir robes, the Hammond organ, the drums that shook the pews, the preacher pacing the stage, voice rising and falling like a soundtrack to salvation, the call and response rhythm, "Can I get an amen?" and the congregation answering like thunder. So when he moved to London for a short work assignment and decided to visit a local church, he thought, church is church, right? That assumption lasted exactly 30 seconds. The building itself caught him off guard first. It wasn't a modern megachurch with LED screens and a parking lot full of SUVs. It was an old stone structure, older than the United States itself. The kind of place that looked like it had survived wars, kings, and centuries of history. Stained glass windows, tall wooden doors, a quiet that felt almost sacred before anyone even spoke. He paused outside and thought, okay, this is different. But different is good. As he stepped inside, the first thing that hit him wasn't music. It was silence. Not the waiting for the band to start. Silence. Not the choir about to walk in silence. A deep, almost library-like quiet. People were seated calmly. Some were reading printed programs. Others were bowing their heads in private prayer. No one was shouting. No one was hugging loudly in the aisles. No aunties fanning themselves dramatically in the front row. He found a seat and waited for the organ to kick in. It never did. Instead, a soft hymn began. No drums, no bass line, just a pipe organ echoing through the cathedral ceiling. The congregation stood together and sang in controlled harmony, reserved, measured, almost hauntingly beautiful. And that's when the first shock hit him. No one was clapping. No one was shouting, "Preach!" Back home, especially in many Black American church experiences, church culture is expressive, it's embodied, it's vocal, it's energy moving through a room like electricity. But here in this UK church experience, everything felt restrained. He started wondering, are they enjoying this? Or am I missing something? Then came the second surprise. The sermon. The priest walked up calmly. No dramatic music, no introduction from a praise team. Just a quiet walk to the pulpit. And when he began speaking, it wasn't with booming volume or rhythmic cadence. It was thoughtful, analytical, structured almost like a university lecture. The message was deep, the theology was rich, but the delivery, calm, composed, almost conversational. Back home, sermons could feel like emotional journeys. The preacher builds momentum, the crowd responds, the energy rises together. But here, the congregation listened silently. No interruptions, no amen, no standing ovations mid-sermon. He felt his body almost fighting the stillness. At one point, he nearly whispered, "That's good," out of habit, then quickly stopped himself. Have you ever been in a place where you felt like your natural reactions suddenly made you stand out? That was him in that moment. But then something unexpected happened. About halfway through the service, during a communal prayer, he closed his eyes. And in the quiet, without drums, without shouting, without the usual emotional cues, he felt something just as powerful. Stillness. A different kind of presence. He realized that what felt like lack of passion wasn't lack at all. It was simply a different expression of faith. In many UK churches, especially traditional Anglican or Church of England settings, reverence often shows through quiet reflection rather than outward display. That realization shifted everything. But the real twist came after the service ended. Because unlike the explosive hug everybody, take plates home type of fellowship he was used to in the United States, people didn't immediately swarm each other. They lined up politely, they spoke in calm tones, tea was served, biscuits were passed around. Tea, at church. He almost laughed to himself. No fried chicken, no macaroni tray in sight. Instead of loud music and crowded fellowship halls, there were soft conversations over porcelain cups. And yet, as he stood there awkwardly holding tea he didn't even like, something else shocked him. People were curious, not in a rude way, in a warm, gentle way. Where in America are you from? What brings you to London? How are you finding the UK so far? They weren't loud, they weren't overly animated, but they were sincere. And then came the moment that really caught him off guard. An elderly British woman, probably in her late 70s, smiled and said, "We're so glad you chose to worship with us today." There was something in her tone, no spectacle, no dramatics, just genuine welcome. And he realized something powerful. Back home, the energy often carries you, the music moves you, the preacher lifts you, the congregation fuels you. But here, in this quiet British church, faith felt personal, internal, reflective. It wasn't better, it wasn't worse. It was different. And that difference forced him to confront something uncomfortable. How much of his spiritual experience was tied to culture rather than belief? That question lingered. He thought about the broader cultural differences between the USA and UK. Americans in general are often more outwardly expressive. British culture tends to value composure and understatement. That same contrast showed up in church. In the United States, particularly within many Black American church traditions, history shaped worship into something resilient, vocal, and communal, born from struggle, survival, and joy in adversity. In the UK, centuries-old church traditions shaped worship around liturgy, structure, and quiet reverence. Two histories, two expressions, same faith. By the time he left the building, he wasn't shocked in the way he expected. He wasn't shocked because it was worse. He was shocked because he realized how big the world really is, even inside something as universal as church. If you're an American visiting Britain for the first time, especially as a Black American navigating both cultural and spiritual spaces, the differences can feel magnified. But sometimes those differences don't divide, they expand you. That Sunday didn't make him miss home less. It made him understand home more. And the next week, he went back, not because it felt familiar, but because it challenged him. He learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the structured prayers, the ancient hymns echoing off stone walls older than his country. He still missed the drums sometimes. He still missed the amen echoes, but he stopped comparing. Instead, he started observing and appreciating. Because here's the truth. Cultural differences between USA and UK churches aren't about right or wrong. They're about history, identity, and expression. And maybe the biggest shock of all wasn't the silence. It was realizing that faith doesn't always have to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sings softly through stained glass light. Sometimes it's served with tea and biscuits instead of a choir solo. So if you ever find yourself stepping into a space that feels familiar but unfamiliar at the same time, don't rush to judge it. Sit in it. Feel it. Let it teach you something. Because you might walk in expecting shock and walk out with perspective. Have you ever experienced a church culture difference like this? Or traveled somewhere and realized your normal wasn't universal? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If you enjoyed this Black American travel story and want more honest reactions about cultural differences between the USA and UK, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, this was only the beginning of what shocked him about Britain. But just when he thought he had fully processed the experience, Britain had one more surprise waiting for him. The following Sunday, he decided to try something different. Instead of going back to the same traditional Anglican church, he searched online for a Black majority church in London. He was curious. Surely this would feel closer to home. Surely this would bring back the familiar rhythm, the drums, the call and response, the energy. When he arrived, the vibe was already different. The building wasn't centuries-old stone. It was a converted community hall. People were laughing loudly outside. Someone was adjusting speakers. He could hear faint gospel chords during soundcheck, and for a moment he smiled. Okay, this feels familiar. When the service started, the music was livelier. There was clapping. There were raised hands. A few amens rang out. The preacher had more vocal rhythm, more fire. But even here, it wasn't exactly the same as back home. The accent changed the music. The cadence of British speech softened the delivery. The humor was different. Inste.